All right, thank you everyone for joining us for a Zoom with Andy Kotelnicki. As always, please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Start with Rich Garcella.
Good afternoon, Andy. How are you? And thanks for.
Great, Rich. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Andy, we haven't had a chance to talk to you for a while, so I'll ask you, what do you think has happened to Nick Singleton's production, and how do you go about getting him back on track?
Well, it's about putting him in opportunities to make sure he could showcase what he does well, and he's got great speed, and we need to do a good job of, getting him on the perimeter, allowing him to get some edges and where his speed can show up. Um, his superpower has been able to when he finds the windows. You hit him full speed, you hit him fast. In those opportunities to have those windows haven't quite been there. Maybe as much as they were last year. So it's about continued reps, opportunities, and then making sure that those opportunities are ones where he's going to have a chance to do what he does well, and that's utilize his speed.
Bob Founders.
Hey Andy, how are you?
Very good.
Hey, whatever's in that coffee cup of yours, I hope it tastes good.
It is water. I've already had my cold brew this morning. Thank you for asking. Um, but I'm just water and ice right now.
I gotcha. I just wanted to ask you about Ethan. First start, very daunting environment. I mean, I know the passing yards weren't great, but I was wondering, as you looked at that, uh, do you think maybe it was a little bit better than it looked in terms of how he handled the game, how he moved in the pocket? And then also, Andy, Ohio State and Indiana are next. How challenging is it for you to get him up to speed against that quality of a foe and play effectively?
Well, everything that you said in the sense of his first start and that kind of an environment, I thought those things he handled really, really well. Um, you know, I was not displeased with his performance. It's nothing to hang your head about, but there's still some meat in the bone still, and he knows that in terms of what to go. I don't want to sound cliche, but it is a very um, you could almost guess or hypothesize that maybe it was going to go something like that. There's things that he does really well, with his feet, and he plays and he makes quick decisions and he goes. And that was evident, I think, to everyone watching. Then there was times where there were some opportunities that maybe we missed or we got off the read too fast or whatever it might have been. But those are things that you would expect to say about somebody who got their first career start. And so I'm pleased. I'm pleased about where he's going. I'm hoping and planning that through this bye week and the next, that there's a ton of growth from start one to start two. I anticipate that happening. But he handled it well, and I think it is a great environment for those who were there. That's an outstanding college environment. It's loud. It's all those sort. It's a great defense, and we're going to continue to play great defenses. So it wasn't, there's no warm up, if you will, to it, but how we've practiced, how we've prepared him, the number of reps we've gotten him through all of spring and in fall camp, in moments where he's gotten to games and all that have kind of prepared him in us for how he's going to handle those things. And I thought he did a really good job with that stuff. So I'm fired up for, as a lot of people say after the first game, week one to week two improvement. So for him, it's going to be start one to start two improvement
Neil
and
Riddell.
growth.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Sorry about the situation. Just wondering how you're approaching these next few weeks between preparing for the season, and are you looking beyond in terms of job hunting? How are you approaching this?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a real question. Here's the unique thing. As different as we all are on a college football team, coaches, different points of their career, players, different points of their career. The only thing that we have a lot in common, but the one thing that we all have very in common now is the uncertainty of the future. Now, the future is always uncertain. We all know that. But when something like this happens, the uncertainty is magnified, right? And we're all in this. And so the message is and our players, I think, have done a great job of that, is that whatever you want for your future as a player or a coach, the best thing you can do is be very present and do a hell of a job with what you're doing today, with what you're doing in today's practice, with what we're doing in tomorrow's practice and in the next game, et cetera, et cetera. So I have, I mean, it's hard not to think about those kind of things, the future and what it holds. But I love our guys and I love our players, and I have an obligation to do the best job I possibly can to help them achieve all their goals, individually and then as a football team. And so I'm not distracted by it. But I am just freaking got my head down working. You know what I mean? Trying to put our guys in the best position possible.
Audrey Snyder.
Hey, Andy, appreciate your time. I guess let me try to frame this broadly. How would you try and explain, or how do you explain what happened to this offense as a whole this year? When you look at it, you guys are 99th overall. This isn't, I think, what anybody here or what you had expected. How would you kind of describe what happened?
I don't know. You know what I mean? There's that answer could be so long and into stuff, but the reality is, it's just, you know, it hasn't gone like we're hoping. And what do? You go to the next play, you go to the next game, you go to the next moment and opportunity. But I don't really have a good explanation for where it is, you know what I'm saying, or where it was, I should say. I'm more focused on what it's got to be by next week. Do you know what I mean? So there really not a lot to say. You can point out stats, you can talk about this or that, and those are all, accurate. They are what they are. So you got to just go out there and work on getting better. That's probably not the profound answer that you're looking for. But you watch tape and those are things you think about all the time. You try not to make comparisons all the time because that is the thief. I think one thing I've learned in this process is no matter, who you have coming back or what your identity or what you are is always going to evolve or change. It's never going to be the same. And that's week to week, and that's year to year, regardless of amount of the people that you have coming back. So it's always like, I don't want to say you start from scratch, Audrey, but you kind of have to approach it that way a little bit. You got to say to yourself, it's going to be different. You got to anticipate that. Of course, there's an art form to how much that actually is or what it looks like, which it's not an exact science. So it can be, that's the challenge. You know what I mean? And then unfortunately, nobody knows those answers to all those things until you start playing real games. And you try to organize practice in a way that it's as realistic possible. But those moments, it's about going into the game, who you are, who you predicted that you were going to be. Was it right? Was it wrong? What steps did you take, in March and April and May and June, July, August to help have an identity and be what you're developing to be, but being able to course correct if you're not.
Donahue.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, Andy, for the time today. During his opening statement out at Iowa City, Terry Smith, unsolicited, brought up this. I'm just going to read you the quote. He said, on offense, we continue to not be able to throw the ball down the field or even throw the ball in the intermediate zone. So we've got to get that fixed. Specifically talking about your passing attack, why have those struggles sustained through the first 7 games? And in terms of fixing things with 5 games left, where do you see like the root needs to be addressed right now?
Well, when you talk about throwing the ball, it's a combination of things. It's fundamentally, it's 3 things. Protect well enough to throw it accurately, and catch it. That's it, right? And there's a whole bunch of little sub bullets in each of those 3 categories. But if you want to be good at throwing the football, do those 3 things. And typically, if you're only doing 2 of those 3 things or one of those 3 things, it's not going to probably be a completion. So we got to do a great job protecting. We've got to do a great job of throwing catchable footballs, and we got to do a great job of catching them when they are catchable. And there's a bunch of things in each of those areas that you do to develop those things. So that's what we focus on. That's what we have been focused on. That's what we focus on now. That's what we focus on every week, and making sure that those things occur and giving guys opportunities to make a play and make it, you know what I mean, when it's thrown. So that's about as succinct as I can answer that. right? Without getting into film and every specific play about how it broke down and why.
Daniel Gallen.
Thanks for your time today, Andy. Appreciate it. We saw the two quarterback sets for the first time this year out in Iowa. Why was this the right time to implement that? And I know that Jackson's status might be up in the air moving forward, but how much of a part of this offense do you see that potentially be moving forward?
Well, it's going to be a part of what we do moving forward, as it goes. It's about, putting stress on a defense. It's about utilizing the players that you have in your roster, evaluating when guys go on the field, who comes off, right? Because you can only play with 11, as you guys know, not to insult anyone's intelligence, but for every time that you put two quarterbacks on, someone's got to come off the field, or you put three tight ends or four receivers or whatever it is, someone's coming off the field. So it's about deciding, does that make sense to do? Does that make sense against an opponent? Does that make sense again with your personnel? To do that. And so from a timing standpoint, it made more sense going into this game, with what they were doing and who we are and what we had available, to do those sort of things. But the question you're asking about using two quarterbacks is the same thing about using, two running backs, or using two tight ends or three tight ends or two receivers or three receivers or four receivers. Or six linemen or seven like situations, opponents, and your personnel, and most importantly, your personnel, dictate and drive those decisions on a weekly basis.
I did want to ask you.
Greg Pickle.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Great.
Good. Hey, it would seem a fourth potential part of your three-step thing you mentioned a second ago would be receivers getting themselves to open. Do you feel like your receivers and your tight ends have done that enough this year? And if not, what can you do over the final 5 games to maybe put them in positions to do that?
Well, there's times that does, and times there isn't. Just like there's times when the ball is thrown well, and sometimes it isn't. And there's times when the protection's great, and the times when the protection isn't. So it's about all three of those lining up on the specific play. So, but you're right, that would be a fourth component to it, right? About getting open. So, things that you can do to help the receivers get open. From a matchup standpoint, you lining them up in the right position. Keeping them fresh and healthy, giving them looks of what they're going to have coming up, how much press versus how much zone, and developing them fundamentally throughout the course of the year to help get them open. But there's different things from splits and motions and all that kind of stuff that you can do to help dictate or control leverage a little bit more, to have guys to allow themselves to have some awareness, to separate and get open.
Max Ralph.
Hey, Andy, appreciate you doing this today. Just to kind of follow up on that, Terry told us that we're going to see more Tysier and Kobe moving forward in that receiving core. Why haven't we seen them to this point? He said, I've seen them all year as the quarterback's coach, and I know what they can do. So what can they bring, and why have we maybe not seen them yet?
Well, I think, both of them bring some quickness. I think Kobe's done a really good job of making some contested catches throughout, the course, of practices and things like that. Why you haven't seen him to date, it's in line a little bit with what I answered before, is who's coming off. And to date before, it wasn't like we said, hey, we're going to take off these guys to put them on. That's all part of the evaluation process for how much or how little somebody plays. And then opportunities too. How many snaps are happening in a game? What kind of game is it? The down and distances, all those sort of things factor into how much guys are playing or not playing. Especially if they've demonstrated some things to be good enough to get onto the football field. To get guys on. And that's one of the hard things is about, if there's a group of guys, that are close together in terms of how much they should play, how do you handle that? And then you get the next thing you know, you don't have enough snaps, so guys don't get on the field as much as they want, or the situation or personnel would dictate something different. Because it's not just talking about receivers playing. It's like, okay, so then that's the backs that come off the field. It's the tight ends that come off the field. So it's all of those things, about when they come on or off the field, or how much they play.
Time for 3 more. Joel House.
Hey Andy, thanks for the time. Looking at Ethan obviously handling the starting role moving forward, how does his skill set change the way you call the offense? And are there maybe some things that you plan to do more with him starting instead of Drew?
Um, I don't know. I mean, it's not a ton different. I think that both those guys had really good, arm talent. I think, you watch um his last game, Ethan, you know what I mean? I think there's some suddenness in the pocket that occurs that 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 is good. You know what I mean? That can help. There's a maturity and savviness that Drew had, at the line of scrimmage that you only gain through experience that Ethan doesn't have. I'm not going to answer, or very well at least answer, like think what would be different. Because you had a game to, you kind of can see that and what it would grow. But for him, the main focus is going to be about just developing him from week one to week two as a starter and what it goes. And he's got that, um, that first game under his belt now. So you really hope that things will take off for him and what he's doing in his decision making, and just go out there and play, cut it loose. Which is one of my favorite things about him. He just cuts it loose. He just drives fast, just go. Make a decision and go. Be decisive.
Avery Hills.
Hey Andy, thanks for your time. Given the offensive struggles, has there been any consideration from you to either give up or like just defer play calling duties at all, whether it's getting more advice from someone or just, getting someone else to do the job?
I haven't had that thought. Um, we always collaborate as an offensive staff when we go through things. So you asked about, getting other people's thoughts, and we do. We always collaborate. We do that together. But no, I haven't thought about retiring as a play caller or giving it up.
Last question, Audrey Snyder.
Sorry, Andy, I couldn't find the unmute button. Um, I wanted to go back to Drew. Obviously, the way everything ends with the injury. How would you kind of evaluate what he's meant to this program, to the offense, and where do you how would you evaluate what he did this year and what maybe NFL teams are going to be getting?
Um, Obviously it ended, just it stinks when a guy, my heart just sinks for him, losing it that way. And I don't know that people, you know, to a lot of people, we're just a college football version of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. We're just a reality show, and people love the drama and the soap opera that evolves around college athletics. Who's getting hired, who's get this job, who got fired, who's going to the portal. People love that stuff. It's a soap opera. It's sports entertainment. Um, and so a lot of times everyone overlooks the effort that individuals put into to performing at a high level. And he's put a ton of effort in. And it just breaks my heart to know that it ended, you know what I mean, with um, an injury. Um, so the human side of it, I'm heartbroken for him, as a person, you know. And again, I'm saying that because he's not just a gladiator in the arena, you know what I mean? Like, he's a human who's worked really, really hard to do it. And so when you see that firsthand, when you're a part of that journey with somebody, and it doesn't work out, it is very, very, it's humbling and it's real. Um, as far as him and what you could, what people are probably going to hope and see from him in the future, is you're going to see a cerebral guy who you could put things on his plate to make plays right. He's got tremendous arm talent, right, to do it, and he'll be able to operate, whatever an offense it would be at a high level. And he's just a fantastic dude. I'm crushed for just how it all went for him this year. But as I told him just yesterday, I was talking to him, say, listen, now you got a different chance to approach all this with a new perspective. That the only thing about an injury that's positive is that as a player, you have a chance to view football from the outside, almost like you do a coach, and that perspective can be very, very valuable for your future. And I think if you ask any player who's ever gone through an injury, they would tell you that. So he's going to gain that experience, which is going to continue just to better him and grow him. But very excited about his future and where it's going to go for him. But heartbroken that how it happened.